Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from the world of medicine, a healthcare entrepreneur from Zurich, Switzerland, Dr. Patrick Vavken. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Vavken is the head of Orthopedics and Traumatology at the ADUS Klinik, and he's a healthcare entrepreneur. So, Patrick, before we talk about, and I'm not sure how you pronounce, is it ADUS or ADUS?
It's ADUS.
ADUS Klinik. Tell me a little bit about your own journey and what drew you to the field of orthopedic surgery.
So there's two sides to that story. The one side is I grew up in a family that was mostly either engineers or military personnel. So we're very strict about doing things, building things that last, doing things that have a meaning, that go on and so forth. And then within this, I used to do a lot of sports, and then usually most people get drawn to orthopedics because they do a lot of sports. They get injured quite a lot. And by the time you're 16, you've gone through like 15 different surgeries already. So you know half of the curriculum. That's the surface of things. But there is actually a deeper layer that's probably more meaningful. So the one thing is, orthopedics is something where you fix things. So it's a very mechanistic way of thinking, right? So you can actually use your hands or a hammer or an instrument to do something to create an effect that's very visible. And that is that second thing. So if you're in internal medicine, you would give your patient 100 milligrams of something, and then you would wait for 6 weeks, and then a number on a chart would go up by 2 points. And that's sort of the the experience you get from pharmacology, for example, right? In orthopedics, you have somebody who can't walk, and you take them to the OR, and the moment they wake up, they can walk again and they have less pains. You get that immediacy of result, and that is very rewarding in that field.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. And how has your own personal experience with injuries influenced your professional journey?
It has a little bit of both. So the one thing is, you get an early understanding of the nomenclature and the terms, and what a humerus fracture is by the age of 12, or a torn ACL by the age of 14. So you're pretty much ahead of the curve to begin with. The other thing is, I think that's a really important thing, and I like to tell my patients this. It's always important as a doctor to be a patient on a regular basis. So only last year, I had a very, very bad disc herniation. I had a cervical disc replacement. Actually, it was done by my wife, who's a spine surgeon.
Wow.
But I mean, this is a whole different story, a very interesting one in terms of fixing and helping relationships. If your wife gets to cut your head off and screw it back on the right way, so to speak, literally speaking, right? Yeah. No, but the other thing is, you need to understand that feeling of depending on somebody else's skills, and sort of you go in anesthesia, you're gone. There's nothing you can do. You're totally exposed to the other person. So there's a trust relationship, and you need to understand this to be a good surgeon, how it feels to be on the other side. So usually that's what I like to tell them, that doctors are the worst patients. Be a patient every now and then see how bad it can actually be, or how good it can be if it's done well.
Well said. So, Patrick, let's talk about the ADUS Klinik. You acquired the ADUS Klinik from being a medical doctor, a surgeon. What led you to take on the challenge of buying and restructuring a public hospital?
Yeah, that ties back into the thing we talked about before, my personal background with engineers and military personnel. So I'm still looking for a better answer. So when I was a resident, like a very, very young doctor, I was asking the older doctors, why are we doing things like this? And they said, well, we always done it like this. And like, that's not good enough an answer for me. I'm looking for a better answer. So that's why I went into research, and I tried to figure out why we do treatments. And then I had the evidence, I had the data, I had the new science, and I needed to put this somewhere. So that when I went into the private practice part of things, because then I could structure the treatments and say, look, I can choose what we're doing because I'm the boss, basically. But I soon realized, in order to do what I want to do, I need the hospital, because in the value chain thinking, that's where I started to go into business side of things. In the value chain, you need the hospital to do the work. So we bought a hospital because we wanted to take care of our patients the best way we could based on the data that we had, and not what somebody else told us to do. And then once you buy a hospital, you think it's very easy, but then you understand how finance works, big problems with HR. So the problems get bigger. And for every answer that you find, every better answer that you find 5 better questions that need more answering. And so this is a never-ending story, I'm afraid.
Right. Correct. And what were some of your challenges and the process that you followed in transforming the ADUS Klinik into a cost-effective institution?
So this is a story of a million small steps, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And healthcare finance is, on a whole planet, is a big, big, big issue. And we said we wanted to be able to give the best treatment to everybody, no matter if they're rich or poor, what type of insurance they have, just the best treatment available. And it's our job to make it so that it's so cost effective that we can offer everything to everyone, basically. So that's where we came from, right? And then we started doing a lot of little things. So, being this is a office, it's not my office. So being the owner and chief and whatnot, I don't have my own office. So we did away with the offices to begin with. And that was, that was a big outcry because I'm a doctor, I need an office, I need an assistant and a secretary. Like, no, we have a clean desk policy. Everybody can sit down here, work from this computer, and I can go to the next room. It's the same computer, same software. And then we did the same thing with, the common staff, there's a secretary that caters to a group or a room or a specific department, not a specific doctor. And then you need to just carry this forward. And the funny thing was, it's not so much the little things where you save $5 here or $10 there. The moment that everybody else sees that you are making an effort, I am giving up my parking space because everybody gets the same, right? I am giving up my office. There's a change in culture because the people that appreciate this gather around you and they will work a little harder, or they will give up little things like, what, I don't need this, I don't need that in order to make this a better place for the patients, right? And I think it's if instilling that sense of cultural switch through, a leadership where you actually act as a role model for what you're talking about. I think that was at the end the most important thing that led to the improvements that we saw.
Wow. And, one is an amazing example you gave about how you're all using the common facilities, etc. But what are some of the other misconceptions that you have seen about bringing efficiency into healthcare?
So a big thing is, a big cultural problem, especially when you come from, I come from a traumatology thing. So, somebody will come into the hospital that there was a car accident, and everybody will do everything they can in this very second to keep this person alive. So there's no thinking about, what is going to happen 5 years down the road. There's no thinking about could we do this and that. Everything needs to be very immediate and everything is super, super, super important. And then, 5 seconds later or 5 minutes later, the next patient. So you don't even think about what happened. You focus on the right next thing. So everything is all in all the time, basically. So doctors like to think that whenever we talk about health economics or cost effectiveness, that is a cold and callous exercise where you're taking things away from somebody, which is not true. It's just the fact that our resources are scarce and limited. There's only so much time. There's only so much blood. There's only so much implants, so much money that you have to make sure that you don't spend too much on one patient that you don't have for the next one. And that is where the definition of sustainability kicks in, right? So you want to serve the needs of today without jeopardizing the ability to serve the needs of the future, right? And that is just a very different way of thinking as a physician. And you need to be able to switch in your head between, being a doctor and then a little later being an entrepreneur, a little bit of something else, and just wear these different hats, right?
Amazing. Your response gives me the segue to my next question. How do you balance patient care with the business aspects of running a hospital?
Yeah, so early on there was a lot of yelling and a lot of crying and a lot of this, and then and a lot of anger. So this is the important thing actually. In business school, when I went here in St. Gallen, it's a thing we call adaptive cognitive leadership. So the ability to switch, basically, inhibition and switching, right? And you need to be able to understand that you serve different roles in different settings, and there's different expectations that people have from you or that you have for people, right? So, for example, I was in the OR this morning, and then within the surgery, I'm the lead surgeon, so I'm the boss. Everybody has to do what I say. There's no questions being asked. Just I hold out my hand, I get something.
Yeah.
But then when I take the same people to a meeting this afternoon, it needs to be a group conversation where everybody looks at each other at an eye level. And the important thing is, you have to you learn to be able to switch in a authentic fashion, right? But we can tell people like right now it's important that I'm leading, and then later you can lead, and we can do it as a group. And you need to work on this. And this is hard. And I don't know if I've really even managed to do this so far. But I think understanding this is the first step, and then just keep yourself, be accountable to yourself and everybody else, and tell people that this is what you're trying to do and make yourself accountable for this is a good step forward.
Well said. Well said. And Patrick, what are some of your thoughts on preventive medicine and its integration into daily clinical practice?
Yes, we think we touched frustration before. Yeah. So basically, if we think about, I like to call this the degeneration of the value proposition of healthcare, right? So in a perfect setting, you would come to me as a patient and tell me your shoulder's hurting. You can't sleep, you can't play golf, and you can't, lift your grandchildren. So your expectation would be that I will do whatever it needs so you can sleep better, you can play golf again, and you can lift your grandchildren. And that would be my value proposition, so to speak, right? But this has gone into an area where now sort of, we're going to patients and tell them, listen, I'm going to sell you an MRI, right? I'm going to sell you a procedure and this and that, and so it leads away from everything. So we're waiting for stuff to happen, and then we sell piecemeal things that might be helpful. If we turn this around, I would tell you, listen, your shoulder's not hurting right now. Let's go to the gym at this point and make you fitter. So when you ask somebody with a business background, you know that any innovation, any update, any modification or transformation of your business, you want to do in a good and stable situation when you actually have liquidity and money and whatnot, because this is the background you need. And once you're deteriorating, sort of, that chance has gone, right? And we're not doing this enough. And actually, we wrote a paper, this must be 10 years ago already, on at least in Switzerland, right? We say that healthcare is getting more expensive, but are people getting something for their money? And we were able to show that at least with spine surgery, arthritis, and hip replacement, even though it's getting more expensive, people get more value. But the biggest thing and the biggest knack that if you would touch this would have been prevention, right? But it's so intangible that people, shy away from it. And this is something we need to work on.
Amazing. So my next question, Patrick, is on technology. And, again, as you just told me, you wear two different hats. One is as the lead surgeon and the other as the CEO. How is technology changing the medical profession, and how is technology changing the way you're running your hospital?
That's good. That's good. There's two questions for you. So the one thing, the things that are happening are literally awesome, as in, you're in awe of this, and amazing, right? And the amount of information you can process nowadays using AI models, wearables, and all this, and the impact this has on health is, you can't even start to fathom where this will go, right? And this will, eventually, and this is not going to be in a very far future, but in a very, very realistic time, we will see that the whole delivery of health care or the maintenance of health is going to change rapidly, right? And this is not going to be led by healthcare systems or physicians or whatnot, because this is so much within IT, and we're not trying hard enough to stay abreast of this development, that I'm thinking this will sort of go into the Googles, the Apples, and all these people, right? But anyway, so we're even on our little small scale, right? We're trying to implement and include as much tech as we can. And then obviously when you think about medicine, the technology changes, there's different treatments, there's different medication, the little things like this, so little individual steps. And then the other thing that is coming in terms of technology is that it's not so much like the type of knee replacement that you get, or the type of pill that you get, or the type of some other treatment that you get, but how do you include this into a bundled treatment, so to speak, that is not so much about I'll give you this, you give me that, but we're treating your problem in a more holistic way that is inclusive of many different things, and that has a way to be measured and weighed and become transparent through the use of digitalization. And this is a little tricky to bring in, mostly also because regulation is still sort of backwards. And while trying to fix fixing regulation for things that happened 10 years ago, and we're talking about things that might happen 5 years down the road. So there's a gap, and working with this delay is very tricky.
Well said. And how would you, or what is the process you would follow to assess or evaluate new medical technologies that are coming up all the time? What would be involved in bringing them into the ADUS Klinik?
Yeah, that is very tricky because there's so many things and there's so much stuff happening. So personally, I usually, I'm very curious about a lot of things. So I have to sort of curb my enthusiasm. But oh,
Yeah.
look, this and that. It's like, it's the puppy dog problem, so to speak, right? Oh, it's a squirrel. But
Mm.
no, when we find things that we like, we usually break them down and see if they're, are they desirable? Are they feasible, right? And what is the financial side of things? So today somebody came and presented something new to us. I think it's interesting. So I'll pitch it to our business team, and we just model these three dimensions. Is this a desirable update that we need? Will that help our patients, or it's just because it's a cool color or it's a fancy thing to have, or is it's an actual impact behind it, right?
Mm.
And is it feasible? Can we do it in our setup, or would this need some major changes or some new laws or something that might be too far in the end of the day? And that is the hardest part. How can we pay for this? Because new stuff, it's expensive, and we need to see if I have enough margin to work this in, or do we have to give up something else in return for this?
Well said. My next question is, given all the work that you've done building ADUS Klinik, and there must have been lots of highs and lots of lows, can you talk to me a little bit about a project that didn't go as planned, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, yes, there was a lot of highs and lows, like you said, and no, it wasn't just me; it's a group effort. But so usually, I mean, so at the end of the day, I guess with little, big and small things, a lot of what we said earlier, that's at the kernel of the problem, and that's gotten a lot better. So in healthcare, being a very very interface rich business, right? Because you have physicians, you have business people, you have legal people, you have patients, you have nursing staff, you have pharmacologists, and so on and so forth, right? The ability to speak that, not only speak to them, but understand, not just hear, but understand what they're saying. I think that was a major caveat. When early on, I thought, look, I'm the doctor, and I've done this, and I'm here, and you have listened to me, right? And that was exclusive. And the starting to think more inclusively, it doesn't matter if somebody has more time at university than I did, or less time, or more degrees or less degrees or something. Everybody's a valuable part of the team, and being able to include their opinions and their notions. It doesn't mean you have to follow every idea, but being able to include them and then discuss together. I think that was the thing that I took from most of these failures. And looking back, a lot of these could have been prevented, but just better communication early on.
That's said. So, time for three more questions. I want to come back to your specialism of orthopedics. How do you foresee the future of orthopedic surgery evolving, given all the new technology that's coming in? And there's artificial intelligence, there's robotics, and there is so much more that's happening.
Yeah, so this is, and I'm very very sad to shock some of my dear friends. I think there's a lot of stuff coming up, and I think one of the biggest things is going to be the fact that there'll be less and less need for surgeons.
Okay.
We have a saying and a thinking that with medication being better, there won't be any cardiologists, there won't be any diabetes doctors, there won't be any this and that, but somebody's always going to fall and break something, and then I need to put it back to better, so our job is secured for all of the future. And then a couple of days ago, I came across an AI model helping to prevent bicycle accidents. And actually, they monitor how you're riding on your bike and where you're going, and the group of people. And actually, they have shown that using this AI app, it's like like Joe Schmo, everybody's risk of bike injuries will go down. I would have never thought that this is possible, but I think there's a lot of stuff coming up, right? Sorry. There's interesting new science going on about genetic treatments of cartilage defects, for example. So I think, with AI getting better, and the Internet of Things, right, where you interact between reality and computers and internet, you have new ways to foresee accidents, to prevent trauma, to reduce the impact of accidents. We may find ways to stimulate cell regeneration a little better. So I think this is going to be the big, I don't know how long, but I think the biggest thing is that eventually we all going to have to put down our knives and do something else for the patients. And this is going to be a major changer.
Yeah. Amazing. Two more questions for you. What role do you believe public policy needs to play in shaping healthcare practices?
Yeah. So there's a fantastic book by a very intelligent gentleman whose name I don't remember, but it's about politics. And the title of the book is Politics: Who Gets What, When, and How. And this is how politics work, right? So I think this should not be a part of healthcare. Policy is where you give guidelines, right? And so I like this as a saying in the Stoics, the Stoa, the ancient Greek philosophy. They said the world consists, what was it, of logic, ethic, and physics, right? And they compared this to a field. So physics is the field, right? And logic is the fence. And ethics is the crop that grows on that field, right, within that fence. And I think it's the same thing that how we should think about healthcare. Medicine, healthcare, what do you want to call it? This is the field where people go, right? Then policy should be the fence around it. So who is in, who is out, what can you do within? And then health should be the value that grows inside. But policy, the fence is always on the outside, not within, because then it will interfere with the soil, basically, or whatever picture you want to draw in your head. And I think this is important, right? So we need policy to guide us, but it needs to be sensible policy that makes sense.
Great response. And my last question, Patrick, what is the single most important change you would like to see as a doctor in the global healthcare system?
Ooh, that's a very good one. So, so on the like the first one thing, prevention, we talked about this, but let's go a little deeper. So if I had a wish from wherever, right? Yeah. The one thing that I would like to move the interest of the patient, the value created, defined as something that the patient needs for himself, come back into the middle of healthcare, and take a lot of politics, a lot of finance, a lot of regulation to that, the defense of the field. But we should turn this around a little bit, going back to a more value-driven thing, where we produce something very individually for each specific patient that can be measured using all the fantastic tools that we have now that are coming up down the road. And I think this would be a very, very sustainable and very worthwhile change.
Amazing. And on that note, Patrick, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about the ADUS Klinik. I think I learned many new things from you today about healthcare, about how, and I just love the way you are constantly going back to the patient. And, in marketing terms, from a business perspective, it's always customer first. And I've repeatedly heard you say patient first. I'm amazed at how much you have how much understanding you have of not just business, but of technology, and how open you are to bringing in more and more new technology. And I just love the way you so easily said someone's going to break something and I'm always going to be there. But thank you so much for speaking to me, and wish you lots of success.
Thank you very much. And likewise.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.